Armin Zulkifli and Farah Aziz believed their secret would never escape the shadows. He was a powerful businessman with everything to lose, and she was a struggling single mother with everything to hope for. What began as a dangerous attraction in Kuala Lumpur's elite circles quickly spiraled into a web of lies, luxury, and betrayal. One man's hunger for control, one woman's longing to be seen, and one marriage built on deception were all moving toward a single night that would change everything. By the time the truth surfaced, love had turned into obsession, and desire had become deadly. Armin Zulkifli was a man admired from a distance and envied up close. In the heart of Kuala Lumpur, his name carried weight, whispered with respect in boardrooms and spoken with awe at elite social gatherings. His success seemed effortless, built on a vast business empire that stretched across real estate, finance, and luxury hospitality. From his sprawling penthouse overlooking the city's glittering skyline to the fleet of high-end cars secured in his private garage, every detail of his life projected power, refinement, and absolute control. To the outside world, Armin embodied the dream of modern success, a devoted husband, a proud father, and a self-made entrepreneur who had mastered the art of winning. Yet behind the polished smile and tailored suits lay a life carefully divided. Armin was a man who thrived on secrecy, meticulously separating his public image from his private desires. His days were filled with meetings, handshakes, and strategic decisions, while his nights often slipped into solitude or carefully planned encounters known only to him. Every move was calculated, every risk measured. He believed discretion was his greatest strength, a shield that allowed him to indulge without consequence. There was a quiet thrill in this double life, an intoxicating sense of control that fed his ego. He convinced himself that he was untouchable, protected by wealth, influence, and charm. But beneath that confidence, cracks had begun to form. The constant balancing act demanded perfection, and even the smallest mistake could unravel everything. Armin ignored the unease growing inside him, blind to the truth that no facade, no matter how carefully constructed, could remain intact forever. Farah Aziz lived a life shaped by responsibility and quiet endurance, far removed from the glittering towers and elite circles of Kuala Lumpur's wealthy class. As a young single mother, her days began before sunrise and ended long after the city lights dimmed. She managed a modest boutique, balancing inventory, customers, and finances, while also caring for her 5-year-old son, who depended on her for everything. Life had forced her to grow resilient. Dreams of ease and security had long been replaced by practical hopes, steady income, a safe home, and a future where her child would not feel the weight she carried. Despite the hardships, Farah possessed a calm strength that those close to her quietly admired. She rarely complained, choosing instead to find comfort in small moments. A warm cup of tea after work, her son's laughter filling their tiny apartment, or a rare evening of silence when exhaustion finally overtook her worries. These were the things that sustained her. Beneath her composure, however, lingered loneliness and a longing to be seen not just as a survivor, but as a woman with her own desires. Her world changed unexpectedly the night she attended a charity gala on behalf of her employer. Surrounded by chandeliers, elegant guests, and an atmosphere of effortless wealth, Farah felt out of place, like a visitor in a world never meant for her. It was there that she noticed Armin Zulkifli. His confidence, his attention, and the way his gaze lingered unsettled her. In that brief encounter, something shifted. A door she had kept firmly closed cracked open, drawing her toward a life she never imagined, unaware of the danger waiting on the other side. The attraction between Armin Zulkifli and Farah Aziz was immediate, intense, and deeply unsettling for them both. What began as a fleeting exchange of glances at the charity gala quickly evolved into something far more dangerous. Armin was not accustomed to being denied, and Farah, despite her instincts warning her to keep her distance, found herself drawn to the attention he offered. His confidence was intoxicating, his words carefully chosen, his interest making her feel visible in a way she had not felt in years. Each brief conversation carried an undercurrent of temptation, charged with the thrill of crossing an invisible line. Farah knew the risks. Armin was married, powerful, and lived in a world governed by influence and secrets. She tried to remind herself of the consequences, of her responsibilities, of the fragile stability she had built for herself and her son. Yet the pull was stronger than reason. Armin's presence represented escape, excitement, and a version of life untouched by constant struggle. For Armin, Farah was a welcome contrast to his controlled existence. She represented spontaneity, vulnerability, and desire unfiltered by social expectations. Their communication became discreet but relentless. Messages were sent late at night, phone calls carefully timed, each interaction pushing them closer to a point of no return. The secrecy amplified everything, making the connection feel more urgent, more consuming. What neither fully acknowledged was the imbalance between them. Armin held power, wealth, and experience, while Farah stood on uncertain ground, risking far more than she could afford to lose. As their attraction deepened, restraint weakened, and the boundary between desire and destruction quietly began to disappear. Their relationship slipped fully into the shadows, carefully hidden from the world that surrounded them. Armin arranged their meetings with precision, choosing places where discretion was guaranteed and recognition unlikely. Boutique hotels tucked away from the city's busiest streets became temporary sanctuaries, as did private rooftop lounges and secluded waterfront escapes. For Farah, each encounter felt unreal, like stepping into a parallel life that existed only in stolen hours. The luxury Armin provided was overwhelming, far removed from her everyday routine of work, bills, and childcare. Candlelit dinners high above the city and sudden weekend retreats created an illusion of freedom she had never known. Yet beneath the glamour lay constant tension. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar face in a corridor sent a jolt of fear through Farah. She became increasingly cautious, glancing over her shoulder, guarding her phone, and inventing excuses to explain her absences. Friends noticed changes she could not hide entirely. She seemed brighter yet distracted, smiling one moment and anxious the next. The secrecy that once felt thrilling now pressed heavily on her conscience. Armin, meanwhile, maintained his flawless public image. He attended board meetings, charity events, and family gatherings with practiced ease, never allowing cracks to show. Control was his greatest weapon, and he wielded it confidently. But even he could not silence the unease creeping into his carefully ordered life. The lies multiplied, each one demanding another. The risk grew with every meeting, every promise whispered in private. What began as an escape slowly became a trap, binding them both to a dangerous cycle of desire, deception, and fear, with no clear way out. City Ramen had always trusted her instincts, and lately they refused to be ignored. Subtle changes in Armin's behavior began to disturb her sense of certainty. He returned home later than usual, his explanations vague and rehearsed. Phone calls ended abruptly when she entered the room, and his attention drifted during conversations that once felt effortless. Even the smallest details unsettled her, the unfamiliar scent on his clothes, the guarded expressions, the emotional distance that seemed to widen with each passing week. Doubt settled quietly at first, but it soon grew impossible to dismiss. Rather than confront Armin without proof, City chose patience. Beneath her composed exterior, she was determined to uncover the truth. She hired a private investigator, a professional known for discretion and precision. What followed was a methodical unraveling of Armin's hidden life. Surveillance photographs captured him entering hotels he had no reason to visit. Financial records revealed unexplained expenses, and discreet inquiries confirmed meetings that could not be explained away as business. Every discovery cut deeper, replacing uncertainty with devastating clarity. For City, the confirmation of betrayal was shattering, yet it ignited a fierce resolve. The man she had shared years of marriage with was no longer a mystery. She now understood the depth of his deception. Still, she remained outwardly calm, storing the evidence, watching, waiting. Armin continued his routines, unaware that his secrets had been exposed. Each smile he offered her felt hollow, each affectionate gesture a cruel reminder of the life they had lost. The balance of power had shifted, and City knew that the moment of reckoning was no longer a matter of if, but when. As Armin's 15th wedding anniversary drew closer, the atmosphere around him grew increasingly suffocating. What should have been a celebration of love and stability instead felt like a countdown to exposure. City moved through their home with a calm that unsettled him, her composure masking something he could not read. Every glance she gave him felt heavier, every question edged with unspoken meaning. Armin sensed the shift, though he could not yet name it. The confidence that had once protected him began to crack under the weight of anticipation. Farah felt the pressure just as intensely. The secrecy that once thrilled her now filled her with dread. Each message from Armin carried urgency, and every meeting felt like it might be their last. She feared discovery, not only for herself but for her son, whose life could be irrevocably damaged by scandal. Armin attempted to reassure her, insisting that everything was under control, yet his words lacked the certainty they once carried. The tension between them was undeniable. In an act of reckless calculation, Armin planned an extravagant anniversary dinner at his penthouse, determined to project perfection to the world. Invitations were sent, arrangements meticulously planned, and appearances carefully curated. To maintain control, he made the dangerous decision to invite both women under the same roof, believing his charm could manage the situation. What he failed to understand was that the evening was no longer his to control. The celebration, meant to reinforce his carefully crafted image, was quietly transforming into a trap, one that would force long-buried truths into the open and set events into irreversible motion. The carefully staged evening unraveled with terrifying speed. Beneath the glow of chandeliers and the soft music filling the penthouse, tension simmered until it could no longer be contained. City's restraint finally broke. With a steady voice that barely concealed years of hurt, she confronted Armin, revealing that she knew everything. The evidence she presented left no space for denial. Photographs, records, details only someone watching closely could know. The illusion Armin had relied on collapsed in an instant. His charm faltered, his confidence drained, replaced by raw panic. Farah stood frozen, the weight of the moment crashing over her. What had once felt like a secret fantasy now revealed itself as something far darker. She watched as Armin's desperation turned volatile. His voice rose, movements sharp and erratic, fear twisting into rage. The confrontation escalated beyond words. In a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly, Armin lashed out. City stumbled, her balance lost as she fell hard against the marble floor. The sound echoed through the room, final and horrifying. Silence followed, thick and unbearable. The luxurious space, once a symbol of success and control, now felt cold and hostile. Farah's heart pounded as reality set in. There was no undoing what had just happened. Armin stood motionless, staring at the consequences of his own actions, the truth finally undeniable. In that single act, years of deception collapsed completely. The anniversary meant to celebrate love had transformed into a scene of irreversible tragedy, sealing the fate of everyone involved and marking the end of Armin's carefully constructed world. The aftermath unfolded with a quiet inevitability that no amount of wealth or influence could stop. Authorities moved through the penthouse with calm precision, documenting every detail and dismantling the illusion that Armin had tried so desperately to preserve. Forensic teams examined the scene, reconstructing the confrontation piece by piece, while digital records revealed movements and communications that contradicted his carefully crafted story. The city watched as the narrative shifted from tragic accident to deliberate violence, and Armin's status offered him no refuge from scrutiny. Farah struggled under the weight of fear and guilt, haunted by the memory of that night. Remaining silent felt impossible. When she finally came forward, her testimony was clear and unflinching. She revealed the hidden meetings, the growing tension, and the confrontation that had spiraled out of control. Her words, supported by surveillance footage, phone records, and witness accounts, became the final fracture in Armin's defense. Each revelation stripped away another layer of his false image. The trial captured public attention, transforming Armin from a respected businessman into a cautionary symbol of unchecked ego and deception. The court found no ambiguity in his actions, and the verdict reflected the gravity of what had been done. As he was led away, his empire lay in ruins, reduced to headlines and courtroom transcripts. Farah began the painful process of rebuilding her life, seeking stability for her child and herself. The tragedy left behind a stark lesson. Secrets thrive in silence. But truth, once exposed, leaves nothing untouched.